This is Richard Wolff from Democracy at Work, responding to another Ask Prof Wolff question from our Patreon community. And this question comes from Eli. Eli asks about the relationship between debt on the one hand and inflation on the other, with particular reference to student debt. And Eli wonders whether cutting student debt down would worsen or lessen inflation, and basically wants the connection between these two to be specified. I'm going to guess that one of the sources of Eli's question has to do with the fact that in public debates among our political leaders, I use the word leaders with quotation marks that I won't underscore, there's an argument by those who want to cut student debt that somehow doing that will have an effect on inflation by making it better or slower rate of increase in prices, and the enemies of helping the students claiming that anything like that would quote unquote worsen inflation. I have to comment on that debate to get into the right answer to Eli's question. The debate of our political leaders is, in terms of economics, simply nonsense. And why? Because what you're doing there is trying to line people up, either for or against relieving student debt, by claiming that doing so will have this or that consequence. If you want there to be less inflation, do whatever it is I'm advocating. It's the same game that an advertiser plays, which is, by the way, where this kind of thinking comes from. The advertiser tells you whatever it is the advertiser can think of that's a positive association. The example I like is if you use this soap, your sex life will get better. You giggle because you understand that this is just an association, verbal. It has no basis in any kind of reality. It's like draping a half-naked female across the fender of a car in the idea that young men will more likely buy the car because in some fantastic way it's associated with a young lady that they might like to have a relationship with, etc., etc. So this is silliness. Why? Because the relationship between a debt, whether it goes up or down, and inflation is very complicated. No simple one-to-one relationship works like that. Let me give you an example. If you were to relieve all student debt tomorrow, then there would be, how many? 43 million student debtors in this country who would suddenly have their debts disappear. And so the argument might be made, wow, all of those 43 million people will now go out and spend money in a way they never would have before when they were carrying all this debt that they were reminded of all the time. And see, that will drive up prices. Okay, you know what this is? This is 1/1000th of all the relevant factors. Let me just give you a few so you can see. If you cut the debt of students in a massive way, here's what's going to happen. They are now going to be able to buy things they had not been able to buy before. They won't just go out and spend money on everything. They will do the things they couldn't do before. For example, sign up for more education, which they couldn't dare do when they were already in debt for their undergraduate. They wouldn't go to graduate school. Here's another one. They buy a home. Here's another one. They get married. Here's another one. They have children. All of those things will have positive and negative effects on inflation of this product or that product. You can't know that in advance. You can't even predict it with any reliability. We know that because every time we can show that rising debt led to rising inflation, we can show that rising debt led to falling inflation. In other words, it depends on everything else going on in society, what that relationship is. Don't be fooled. The relationships between different parts of the economy are very complicated. They don't reduce to A causes B. That's something you hope for because you would like perhaps the world to be simple enough to be captured that way. But it's like answering the question, why did you choose that person as your partner? Why did you like that particular kind of music? If you say it's because of X, you haven't understood yourself real well, because it's a million factors, many of which you'll never grasp. That's part of life and the mystery of life. It doesn't disappear. Don't be fooled by advertising. There's no one-to-one relationship between one thing and another. Which brings me back to one of Eli's concerns, student debt. Here's the reality as I see it. I don't know what the long-term effect of more or less debt is on inflation or anything else. But I do know something about short-term effects, and effects that I'm pretty sure of, and I'm going to go with those. Here's one. If you make students pay for college at where colleges are raising prices, and by forcing them to go into debt, there are going to be millions of students who don't go far in education because they can't afford the debt. That's a loss, not just to those students, but to society as a whole, from all the added creativity and productivity more education might have given those young people. It puts a burden on people who are getting an education rather than seeing them as a precious resource for every community. I like to remind people that in the People's Republic of China, they're making education free. They're expanding their universities left and right, while the United States does the opposite, in part by loading students up with debt. It's self-destructive. It's downright stupid. And the question is really, why would a society do that when it itself will suffer? It's a sign of things being out of control. Relieve student debt because it's the good thing to do for those students and for our society. As to what its effects will be on inflation, that's a very complicated story depending on all the other things going on in society, which we cannot foresee, many of which we cannot know. And so to base a decision on some simple-minded notion that if we do A, we get B, is a really backward way to face the problems of an economy or a society or each of us as individuals. Please share this kind of intervention with friends and neighbors. Share this video. Work with us, partner with us. It's how we extend our reach. And any support you can provide beyond that will be that much more appreciated. Thank you.